The disgraced financier Bernie Madoff dies at the age of 82. Madoff, infamous for spearheading the world's largest pyramid scheme, was serving a 150-year jail sentence in the United States. We'll discuss his life and death during the programme with our correspondent in New York. In other world news, drawing America's longest war to an end, the White House prepares to announce the withdrawal of the last US troops from Afghanistan. And alarm in Europe today as Tehran says it's planning to boost uranium enrichment to 60%. This as President Hassan Rouhani doubles down in blaming Israel for the attack at Natanz. Those are the world news headlines this hour. I'm Nadia Massi in Paris. Thanks very much for being with us. And we start then with the news that the disgraced Wall Street financier Bernie Madoff has died in prison at the age of 82. Madoff was the mastermind behind the worst financial scam in history, which defrauded tens of thousands of people around the world of billions of dollars. He died whilst serving a 150-year jail sentence in North Carolina. For more on his life and his death, we can talk now to Emmanuel Saint-Martin, who's written a book about Madoff and is covering this story for us today from New York. First of all, do we know at this stage the cause of Madoff's death?
Well, Nadia, he was 82 and had been sick for a long time now, for many years. He actually tried to get released from prison, compassionate release, in last June, and that was denied at the time. And his lawyer now says that he actually died of the kidney disease that he had been treated for many years. In all, he spent over 11 years in prison, and as you said earlier, he had been sentenced to 150 years in prison, effectively a life sentence.
Yeah, and the judge during his sentencing described Madoff's crimes as extraordinarily evil. Remind us a little about what Madoff did.
Yeah, it's really the scale of the scam that's astonishing because, as you said, it's up to now the biggest investment fraud of the history of the United States, and he ripped off more than 30,000 people, clients, from more than $65 billion. But the scheme was really simple. It was like a classic Ponzi scheme. He was taking money from investors, but instead of investing it, was giving it as to existing clients. And it lasted. The reason why it became so big is that it lasted for over 2 decades, and he was very. He was able really to have a large network of clients. A lot of people were trusting him. He was a very well-known figure on the market here in the US and in Europe. And of course, the reason why it became such a worldwide scandal is that a bank like UBS, the famous Swiss bank, and other European banks and very famous investment funds actually invested with Bernie Madoff and put a lot of money with him. But of course, what was the most striking at the time was the number of smaller investors who put all of their money, all of their wealth with Bernie Madoff, because for so many years he was able to give them returns, high returns, 10, 15, 20%, consistently, years after years. Obviously, that ended when the financial crisis started in 2008. It was not a lot of people were trying to withdraw money from his fund, and the entire scheme collapsed. At the time, released the scale and the duration of the scam that was really striking at the moment. He had become really the symbol of that financial crisis of 2008.
All right, Emmanuel Saint-Martin for us there in New York. Thank you very much indeed for reminding us a little bit about the crimes of Bernie Madoff the day that he dies in North Carolina. Now, on what will be the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, the United States is to withdraw all of its remaining troops from Afghanistan. President Biden will make the formal announcement later today, but this morning his most senior diplomat, Antony Blinken, has been holding meetings with NATO leaders in Brussels to coordinate the pullout of troops. Here's Blinken speaking this morning.
After the United States was attacked on 9/11, together we went into Afghanistan to deal with those who attacked us and to make sure that Afghanistan would not again become a haven for terrorists who might attack any of us. And together, we have achieved the goals that we set out to achieve. And now it is time to bring our forces home. We will work very closely together in the weeks and months ahead on a safe, deliberate, and coordinated withdrawal of our forces from Afghanistan. But even as we do that, our commitment to Afghanistan, to its future, will remain.
Well, how do Afghanis today feel about the American pullout this 2 decades after the intervention? Laurent Berchika reports.
Torn between dreams of peace and fears of civil war, Kabul residents were left facing an uncertain future after the US and NATO confirmed their withdrawal from Afghanistan.
اما اگر خارجی اینجا باشن صلح در افغانستان خیلی ناممکن است و بودن از افغانستان خیلی به مشکلات را بار میاره.
که امریکا این کار نکرده و ما نظر ما است که نباید برای تا انجام همین مسئولیت‌ها قوی حاکمیت قانون، دموکراسی، رفع تشوشات.
Many Afghans fear the end of US military presence could create a security vacuum and wipe out the democratic gains of the past 20 years. Fighting between the Afghan military and the Taliban still rages in most of the country, with the group now controlling large swathes of the countryside, as well as several strategic arteries. Analysts warn the departure of foreign troops will leave the Taliban free to ramp up their insurgency, potentially plunging Afghanistan into a full-blown civil war.
The United States' credibility and standing and stature around the world will be severely damaged if in the case of the withdrawal of US forces, Afghanistan plunges into a deadly civil war.
Even the best-case scenario, a peaceful political settlement to form an interim government involving the Taliban, could prove problematic. The insurgent group's main ambition is for Afghanistan to return to an emirate run along strict Islamic lines, something which analysts warn would essentially leave the country in the same situation it was 20 years ago, before the US invasion.
In other world news, European leaders have today voiced alarm at the news that Iran is planning to start enriching uranium to 60% purity. This a move that brings the country closer to the levels needed for an atomic bomb. Now, Tehran has long denied it is trying to build a nuclear weapon, but President Hassan Rouhani has said that Iran is taking action now in response to what he said was a recent Israeli attack on its nuclear facilities. Sanam Shantier has the details.
The Iranian leadership turning up the heat in a region already in the throes of several major challenges, and it looks like a game of tit for tat.
What you are seeing, our response to your malice, is replacing the damaged centrifuges with more advanced ones and ramping up the enrichment to 60% at the Natanz facility.
President Hassan Rouhani's announcement comes after an attack on a nuclear facility under extremely high security located in the desert in the central province of Esfahan. The incident cut off electricity to the site while reportedly damaging a number of centrifuges. While there have been conflicting accounts of what caused the blasts, Iran has pointed the finger at Israel, calling it an act of nuclear terrorism. Israel, for its part, as a matter of policy, has not confirmed or denied the attack, but the country's media has widely reported that it had orchestrated a, quote, devastating cyber attack. Some observers fear the shadow war will not push Tehran towards a diplomatic compromise, especially at the negotiation table.
Without a doubt, these are very negative developments that can make these talks even more difficult. But I think what it also shows is that every time you have the Israelis attacking, sabotaging, assassinating in Iran, it undermines the prospect for a diplomatic solution. And it shows that there really isn't any military solution, because all of those different measures by the Israelis have been countered by escalation on the Iranian side, in which they further advance their nuclear program.
Now, Iran's latest move is a message and a significant step as it takes the country closer to the weapons-grade level of 90%. That said, nuclear bombs are religiously forbidden by the Islamic Republic. Additionally, Tehran claims its enrichment program is only meant for peaceful purposes, a notion challenged by Israel and some US officials.
Now, in what is a European first, Denmark has announced today it will stop using the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine altogether. Now, this follows possible links between the Oxford vaccine and very rare cases of blood clotting. The European medicines regulator said last week that the benefits of that vaccine far outweigh the risks, but it added that it was up to individual countries to decide what steps to take. The suspension by Denmark could delay the country's vaccine rollout by about a month. Well, in other world news, France has suspended all travel from Brazil. This as concern is growing about the P1 variant, which experts say is particularly infectious and may be increasingly affecting younger people. Brazil's death toll is the second highest in the world, and today the Senate there opened an investigation into the president's handling of the pandemic. From Rio de Janeiro, Tim Vickery reports.
The last Air France flight. The last ticket to Paris for Romain Legal, a young student who had to cut short her Brazilian adventure after the announcement by the French Prime Minister. She had already undergone a PCR test.
Et donc il y a juste un papier à remplir en plus. C'est pas dans les bars. Au début je l'ai fait, mais au vu de la situation, du nombre de morts qui a augmenté, j'ai vraiment changé mes habitudes. J'ai vraiment fait attention au vu des morts et au vu du nombre en fait de personnes atteintes du Covid et notamment du variant.
Brazil is gradually becoming isolated from the world as the death toll rises. One of the hardest hit cities is Rio, also one of the places where vaccination is happening most slowly. In this Olympic park, which 5 years ago welcomed the world, they're going as fast as they can.
AstraZeneca, a dose é 0,5.
It's the turn of Marta, this 63-year-old woman.
Muito lento, muito. Principalmente aqui no Rio de Janeiro, está muito, muito lento. E ainda tem muita gente que não está tomando a vacina, infelizmente.
There's relief in the air and some anger too.
Sei lá, negligente. Por aí.
What more could
Poderia
he
ser
have
feito
done?
demais. Eu acho que lá atrás já poderia ter começado e acho que já teria muito mais gente vacinada, menos mortos, entendeu? Muito.
Tenha tomado a vacina, a gente também pode pegar. E agora tem P1, variante, ele está ficando resistente.
According to a recent study, the Coronavac vaccine, the main one used in Brazil, is very effective against the new variant. The problem is that only 11% of the population have been vaccinated to date, a rate far too low when Fiocruz, the Brazilian equivalent of the Pasteur Institute, has detected more than 90 new worrying strains in the country, including the infamous P1 variant, which has been studied by this specialist.
A vacinação, em grande escala, se acompanhe do isolamento social. Vacinar apenas não contém a transmissão. E, além disso, o Brasil, de certa maneira, propiciou a propagação dessa variante na medida em que não tomou medidas de contenção social, de fechamento. Se hoje há um fechamento de fronteira, ele foi um fechamento tardio.
The fear of the health specialists is this. Underground parties are taking place everywhere, like this one in Rio just a few days ago, encouraged by a president who still argues against lockdown and social restrictions. In the streets of Rio, bars and restaurants have just reopened, against the backdrop of a variant that increasingly infects young people. In intensive care units, half of the patients are under the age of 40.
All right, you are up to speed with all of our top stories on France 24 this hour. Thanks for watching. Do stay with us. I'll have more world news for you in 15 minutes.